Hey, and happy Friday, and welcome to Astrology Fridays. It's lush to be with you today, sharing the astrology, and we've got a bit of a topic to start with, Gemini season wit and wisdom. Can't wait to get into that in a moment. How are you riding the full moon energies from yesterday, first of all? It was quite an interesting one, wasn't it? I found it fairly light as far as full moons go. I'd love to hear in the comments how you're still feeling that residue energy. We've still got the full moon vibes for another day or so. So I'd love to hear how you're getting on with that full moon that was in Sag. And it was a big one. It always is, isn't it? I got the call to clear out some clutter, which is kind of an ongoing thing for me, really. There's always clutter to clear out, but it's a great time to do it on the full moon. So if you haven't done anything like that already, there's still time to really utilize those energies, really ride still the full moon vibes through. But the sun is in Gemini season, so let's get into our topic today. Gemini season, wit and wisdom, and there's some reasons why we have called it wit and wisdom today, which I'm going to come on to. But the sun went into, so I've got my chart down here that I'm looking at that we will make some reference to. So if you see me looking down, we've got the chart up for today, and I've got a chart up for towards the end of the week as well. So we're going to look at all the astrology around Gemini season happening. So Gemini season is already underway. We've got the sun in Gemini now for the next solar month ahead. And this is a lightness. Like, how are you feeling the energy? Because I'm feeling it. It's a lighter energy with Gemini. We've had the stable solidity and the kind of fertilizing the ground, the nourishing ground of Taurus season. And now Gemini is a lightness. What I love about Gemini is it's the social butterfly. So it's a real lightness. It's a quite a flitting energy. And with the sun in Gemini, that's our life force. The sun is our vitality. It's our life force energy. It can be our drive. It can be the light we've come here to be, really. So with the sun in Gemini, we've got a sociability. That really is that social butterfly element that I mentioned. It's a lightness as well, I think, because I don't know where you are in the world watching, but if you're in the Northern Hemisphere, we're getting a little bit warmer weather. We're sort of coming out of hibernation a little bit, really. And it feels, quite in keeping with Gemini season. If you're here in the Northern Hemisphere, we kind of got this coming out of our caves of the winter, of the cold weather. We're getting a little bit more warm weather anyway, and it really feels like it's a bit lighter. It's a lighter energy. It's an air sign, it's that lightness in terms of the air element as well. It's an intellectual energy. It's witty. It's quick. Gemini energy is quick, good-humoured. It does like to flip between things, so we want to watch that we're not feeling too scattered, that we're not placing our fingers in too many pies. That is a real Gemini trait, but not always a negative thing. It's a great thing if we're not scattering our energy too sparsely. But it is great for being really active and being really involved in lots of different projects and lots of things, as long as we can manage our energy in that and we're not getting too scattered or too kind of lost in it. So it's a great time for anything on an intellectual level. It's a great time for communicating with friends, loved ones, partnerships, businesses, projects, in our interactions on social media. It's a great time for social media energy, building websites, writing books. I'm a bit biased on that one, but it is a great time. It's actually a great time in a number of ways for those things, which I'm going to share with you as we go through. But the sun in Gemini particularly kind of really gives us this energized focus on areas of communication and being a social butterfly, and this lighter energy. It's more of a mental energy than a heart energy. So we do have the tendency with Gemini on this, all the signs have a spectrum. There's no good or bad in astrology, it just is. But we have this spectrum of what you could think of as higher and lower aspects, or shadow and light aspects. We've all got all of them within all of us. We've all got shadows and light within us all. So it's really more, I like to think of it as a spectrum. And there's no right or wrong, good and bad. It just is. So we can just recognize these spectrums and utilize the bits that we want to, because that's the beauty of awareness and the beauty of astrology. We get to have these conversations, we get to see things, we get to, expand our knowledge and wisdom. And our intellect, which is all about Gemini energy. So it's a great time for, looking at these things, reflecting upon things, learning. Gemini loves to learn, so this is a great energy for learning. But on that spectrum of what's called perhaps the more shadow side, or the less desirable traits that we might think of, is we've talked about being too scattered. So we don't want to put our energy out in too many different places and then feel ungrounded. We want to watch out for that. We also want to watch out for the tendency, if unchecked, if without awareness, this one can crop up with being on a very surface level with Gemini, because as we mentioned, it's that air sign. It can be deemed as a little bit superficial. And that's really about it being that surface level, that mental level, rather than it being the depth of the heart necessarily. But again, with the beauty of awareness, we get to choose, don't we? So it's really how you want to ride the energy and how you want to bring forward and being those states within yourself. We get to choose how we show up. We get to choose the states that we be in. And being is where it all starts. So that's, how our tangible reality manifests around us is from our being state, from the states that we choose to adopt. So we want to avoid the superficiality. We want to avoid any tendency to gossip, or because Gemini energy is so communicative. It loves to chat, and sometimes even without meaning to, Gemini energy can just spill out. It's, it's verbal, it's chit chat, it's that lightness that we know and love about Gemini, but we want to watch out for, mindless gossip would be perhaps less desirable energy that we want to avoid. And if we think about the archetype of Gemini, we see the twins. So it's representing the dualistic nature of Gemini, which is also a lot about adaptability. It's changeable. It can deal with change. It can deal with transition very well. Again, that lightness, that air element can carry through change quite easily. So we want to adopt all the strengths of that sign, and the energy that's in our life force. Our collective life force is how I think of the sun. And when it changes signs, we can take on the collective life force in a new direction with that sign. And so we've got all this beautiful communicative lightness and sociability and adaptability that we can really adopt into our state of being at this time. So with the twins there, that's where I think some of the negative connotations of this two-facedness can have been deemed. But again, it depends on our choices. We don't have to, show up in that way, of course. So it's just great to have these conversations and think about it. So we want to avoid any situations where we might accidentally be saying too much, or we might be speaking our truth, but actually, maybe just a little bit more thought on if that's going to upset anybody, how we want to, show up. And this isn't about censoring our truth, by the way. We always want to speak our truth. We always want to release. We don't want to cause any blockages in our energy. We want to speak as we find and speak our truth for sure. But with Gemini, we want to just make sure that we're being in tune with our hearts when we do so, because as we were saying, Gemini can really operate from a mental level rather than a heart and a depth sometimes. So we want to make sure that we're really engaged from a place of truth and from a place of kindness and awareness, that we're not speaking on a superficial or a light level. Now back to the wit and wisdom. So the wit and wisdom of Gemini season, I think, is really interesting. Now, I've called today wit and wisdom because we've got a number of factors that really can deepen the intellectual level of Gemini and bring it into that wisdom. So wisdom really traditionally is encompassed in the sign of Sagittarius, but we've got Gemini on the opposite axis in the zodiac wheel. So Gemini is about learning and knowledge and intellect and really intelligence, actually, deep intelligence, or knowing a lot of different things, having lots of conversations, loads of learning, loads of different avenues to get really curious and go down. That's all real Gemini traits. Whereas on the opposite scale, where we've just had the full moon opposite the sun, the full moon was in Sag, and Sag on the opposite side of the zodiac in direct opposition with Gemini is the deep kind of truth of wisdom, of philosophy, of philanthropy, of, you know, wondering and gaining extensive deep wisdom over lifetimes and lifetimes. That's kind of more Sag energy. But we've got a number of things about this Gemini season that give a real opportunity for more depth of learning. And namely, that is Jupiter coming into Gemini on the 25th, so tomorrow. So we've got an added layer of depth to this Gemini season that I love. And so with all that beautiful Gemini energy that invites us to want to get learning things, we can really have an opportunity this week to apply it. And over the new solar month ahead in Gemini season, because Jupiter's going to be there for a while, nearly a year, Jupiter will be in Gemini from the 25th of this month. So with that, we've got a real opportunity to kick start here with Gemini season and for the whole cycle of Jupiter in Gemini for the next year, an opportunity to deepen our learning, to really deepen creativity within our knowledge base and really use that for deeper practices. And I'm going to come on to that a little bit more. So it's an exciting time. So enjoy the wit and the wisdom, enjoy the lightness, the social butterfly element of the sun in Gemini. We've also got Venus has gone into Gemini from yesterday. So from the 23rd of May, Venus is in Gemini as well. So we've got these three planets together in Gemini with the midheaven there as well, which is our career line. And I'll come on to that shortly as well. So we've got this stellium of planets in Gemini, and it's a really beautiful energy for wit and wisdom, particularly with Jupiter there giving us that depth on our knowledge and our learning. So Venus being there for about 3 or so weeks, and Venus in Gemini, think flirty, think that social butterfly kind of going around, and that light, harmonious energy that Venus loves to bring, the feminine touch, the fun, the play, the romance, with the lightness and the communication of Gemini. And you've got a really kind of nice time for bringing some flirtatious energy if you want to bring that into your connections. And these can be in all relationships. Venus energy really teaches us about our values and our connections in all of our relationships. Of course, I always say this, the most important one, starting with ourselves. So it's a really great time to communicate with oneself, actually. Get clear on what you're needing, because Venus loves to think about, you know, needs and values and resources, inner and outer. So it's a great time with Venus in Gemini to have these conversations with yourself. What are you needing today? What would bring you the most benefit? You know, what would bring you inner and outer resources? And they might be through a really great way of connecting with that would be through journaling or writing at the moment, because Gemini loves to kind of use words. This is another thing. I mean, think about Russell Brand. This is Gemini energy at play in action. We can think of, you know, how these signs manifest their energy when we know a certain person's star sign. Think of Russell Brand, his eloquence with words. He knows an incredible vocabulary. He's fascinating to listen to, and of course he's written books. And you know, whether you like these celebrities or not, it's just interesting to think about, you know, their energy and the energy of the star sign, and that's what's kind of available to us in the cosmos at the moment. You know, if you've heard my videos before, you'll know that I talk about as above, so below. So what's kind of playing out in the astrological transits and aspects as the planets move and make these relationships with each other, we have a reflection of that playing out within us. So we have all of the signs, all of the kind of traits within them, all of the spectrums of, you know, the most desirable and less desirable traits of all of that. We have all of that within us as a reflection of the cosmos. So when these aspects play out in the sky, we have access to awareness about that, and can, you know, either recognize that within ourselves or adopt it if we want to bring in more of that energy to make that work for us. That's the beauty of awareness, isn't it? We get to choose. So yeah, going back to Gemini energy, we can think about words, the eloquence with words. It's a great time for utilizing those. It's an amazing time for journaling, getting clear with oneself, as I mentioned, but it's also a great time to utilize this energy for your connections with others, healing relationships through communication, through words, having previously unsaid conversations that, you know, are ready to be shared. It's an amazing time to do that. It's an amazing time to heal connections with siblings, neighbours. I mention that because those are areas linked to Gemini energy again. Gemini rules a number of different areas, like all the star signs and communication, siblings, neighbours, general kind of connections through talk and literature and all of that kind of thing are ruled by Gemini. So it's an amazing time to utilise the soft and harmonious touch of Venus on those areas, because wherever Venus touches, you can guarantee there's a softening to the energy. There's a harmonious touch, and with Jupiter as well there in Gemini, we've got a touch of luck. So it's a really beautiful time for all our endeavours relating to communication with oneself and with all others, all relationships, all connections. It's an amazing time to connect with your business, for example. You know, our businesses, our workplaces have our energy, a connection with our energy. So it's an amazing time to bring in the values of great communication in those areas. It'd be an amazing time to do any public speaking roles, anything you want to share your message, really. Gemini energy is known as the messenger of the gods. So as long as we're bringing, you know, truth and kindness with that, as I mentioned earlier, we want to also bring our authenticity. Again, getting really deep with our truth and with our, you know, what's being shared for the good reasons, what's being shared for the higher reasons, rather than that kind of idle chit chat that we mentioned is a possibility with Gemini energy. But where we're coming from a place of authenticity, truth, kindness, love, you know, it's an amazing time for all of those connections, speaking out, writing, and anything else you can think of in that realm of words and of intellect. So I really invite you to enjoy that. I'm going to talk a little bit more now specifically about Jupiter in Gemini. So that goes in tomorrow, as I mentioned, from the 25th. And we've got this really beautiful, deep opportunity to really deepen our connection to our knowledge. So as I mentioned, this interesting reflection with Gemini and Sag. So we're just coming out of that sun and moon opposition with the full moon yesterday. But I think we've got an invitation to really extend that with Jupiter in Gemini, because Jupiter is all about deep wisdom. It's also very fortunate. It's the planet that's known as the Great Benefic because it brings a touch of luck, it brings good fortune. So all of your endeavours that I mentioned before, anything that's linked to communication, any conversations, any book writing, public speaking, journaling, channeling, all of that also not only has a touch of harmony on it from Venus, but also has a touch of luck and benefit and fortune on it from Jupiter. So it's an amazing time to give your projects a real kind of dose of healing and love and luck. That is a really great use of this time. And with Jupiter in Gemini, as I mentioned, for the next year, going into June next year, we've got this real expanded time on communication. So with Gemini loving learning, we've got an expansion of learning. It'd be an amazing time to undertake a new mode of study, a new course, new avenues of learning, even if it's just from your own armchair, like getting really deep in learning and really getting curious about different avenues. We don't want to take on too much. Again, you know, thinking about our ability to hold what we're, holding comfortably. So we're not going over capacity, we're not getting scattered, we're not getting ungrounded, but it's an amazing time to take on new learning projects that are within our capacity. So I really invite you to think about what areas really sing to you in terms of expanding on your knowledge, expanding on your learning, expanding on your speaking of your truth as well. Of course, wherever Jupiter touches, it expands. So as well as bringing fortune and good luck and benefits to the sign, to the planet, it can also bring an expansion of the areas that we mentioned before, like the superficiality and the, idle chit chat and the gossip. So we want to look at where we're showing up in that energy, as our awareness, as our blind spots, perhaps. So thinking about that whole spectrum, where does Jupiter in Gemini show up for you, and how does that energy manifest for you? Are there things you can be adopting and utilizing from an expansion on your area of communication? If you want any help with looking at your birth chart, please reach out, because we can always have a good look at your birth chart as well. I love looking at a new chart. Absolutely love a new chart. It's exciting. You can see where these signs and the planets impact on your personal life in different areas. So that's always an interesting one as well. I'm going to finish, before we do an oracle card as well, I'm going to finish with a quick look at the chart. So we have this stellium, as I mentioned, in Gemini. That includes the midheaven. So I'm looking towards the end of the week now, coming up to around the 30th of May. Now we've had the midheaven in Gemini for a little while as well. But also to mention that is our career line. So if we have any professional projects or changes in career or deepening of our current career, it's also an amazing time to bring in the communication to that. Also towards the end of the week, by the 30th of May, so just before we meet again on the 31st next week, we have Mars and Chiron exactly conjunct again. Now they've been doing a bit of a dance with each other for a while in Aries. That is giving us an amazing opportunity to alchemize our deepest wounds for their wisdom and for their gold. And Jupiter energy also loves to do a bit of that, but Chiron particularly, because Chiron is the wounded healer in the zodiac. It's the archetype of the shaman, of the counselor, of the therapist, and Chiron with a close relationship to Mars in the conjunction, the closest relationship there is in the astrological aspects. So those two are making a synergy of heightened energy together, basically Mars and Chiron together. When a planet comes into conjunction, if you've heard me speak before, you'll know that it's a synergy of the two planets together that enhance and heighten the energies combined. So with Chiron, the wounded healer, and Mars, our action and our will and our drive, we've got this expansive energy, a driven energy. It can be a bit of an explosive energy, because those planets are in Aries, which is the fire sign that loves to be dynamic and start things. So we've got an opportunity to look at where we're being triggered potentially, and utilize that for, as I say, alchemizing the gold from our deepest wounds. If there's any healing that needs to kind of take place, it will be shown, and it will be about looking at, where your energy is showing up in terms of, what things are being highlighted, what things are being triggered, what wounds are being poked at. And we can normally bet our bottom dollar that it's something about ourselves. Something external might be poking at us, but our reaction will be showing us where we are needing to heal. It'd be really exciting to bring my book to you as soon as possible. I talk about a lot of this stuff in my book that I'm writing at the moment and more, and the oracle deck that I am creating. So it'll be a pleasure to bring that to you soon. But for now, I'm going to use the beautiful Rebecca Campbell's Work Your Light. So let's have an oracle card for Gemini season and anything else that wants to be shown for our highest good only. I always set that intention. We want to hear any guidance and messages that are for our highest good only. And do comment if this card speaks to you and if this has resonated, if there's any questions you want to share, any comments you want to make. I'd love to hear it. Always love astrology chat and more. I do have planets in Gemini. I'm actually a Cancerian, but I've got Mercury in Gemini and a few others as well. So love a chit chat, love the Gemini season energy, love getting curious, love learning. And it's great to enjoy that social butterfly energy as well when we can. So let's have a card for today and see what wants to be shown for us for the highest good. Okay, we've got the Pleiades. So double mission, channeling and uplifting humanity. Now, I love this card, and it's actually very fitting with Gemini season, because I mentioned before, channeling is an amazing use of that energy, sharing messages, sharing higher wisdom, higher learning. Again, if we think about the mix of Jupiter in Gemini, we've got that higher learning, the depth of learning, the real wisdom taken from our knowledge base. It's really deepening the wisdom from intellect into a really kind of deep truth. And this is what this card's all about, really, channeling from the Pleiades. Now, whether you connect with, Pleiades specifically already or not, there is a really beautiful message in that card, in this card, that you may have a double mission. And this is a lot about evolving in your own path and also supporting others to evolve on theirs. So if this card speaks to you, it might be that that's part of your message and your mission here on this lifetime. And it connects with me. It's one of mine. As I evolve, I'm inspiring the collective to evolve. And that's what really runs through all of my work with the book, with the Oracle deck, but also with Reiki treatments and training and astrology readings. We're in it together. We're all evolving together. And this is a really beautiful reminder and a very apt card for that. We're inspiring each other to evolve, because it's all about developing, isn't it? Being the next best version of ourselves, not because that's, some cliche thing to do, to say, and not because it's the latest buzzword, but because, we want to be accessing our highest potential. We want to be enjoying this life. This life is short, lifetimes are short, really. So we want to be enjoying them as much as we can from the next place, or from our current place, actually. Let's keep it now. From a place of being in our highest potential. That's a great use of this card. So enjoy that energy. Enjoy Gemini season, the wit and wisdom, keeping it light, but also with the opportunity to gain depth in our truth. So I hope you'll enjoy that. And I'll look forward to being back again next Friday on the 31st for more astrology chat. Much love.